Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell, and I'm back again with Mark Hunter, Mary Kelly, and Sam Richter. We're here to discuss our groundbreaking white paper, The State of American Business in the Age of COVID, Challenges, Opportunities, and Solutions. And today we're going to dive into a really important topic, and that is resources. What resources do you need to really make it through an uncertain marketplace? So, Mark Hunter, why don't you kick us off in talking about the subjects that we covered in resources area of the white paper?
Yeah, well, there's two ways to look at resources. One, what are the resources you need to conserve and protect? And what are the resources that you need to expand and build upon? Let's talk first about resources we need to conserve and protect. It's amazing every time we go into an economic downturn, how much more efficient we become. Now, why is that? Because we've become lazy over the last 8 or 9 years of economic growth. So we need to be looking at every single expense we have out there. Now, don't just look at the monthly recurring expenses. Look at those annual expenses. The annual expenses are the ones that will come up and bite you. And boom, before you know it, you've paid for another year. So that's just a real quick thing. Mary, I'm sure you've got a lot more specifics. Jump in.
So as an economist, I am crazy wild about my executives making sure they know their numbers. One of my favorite execs, I know we're not supposed to have favorites, but one of my favorite CEOs not only knows his numbers every month, but he reviews the numbers with his entire company. And I'm talking everybody, the janitors, everybody knows the numbers every single month of what they're doing, their profits, their losses, their expenditures, their revenues, everything. And from his perspective, he says it's so important for us to all know the numbers, because this way, my transparency means my employees understand why the bonuses this year are 3.5% instead of 3.7%, because I map it out for them, and then nobody is upset. But many companies, you and I have all worked with companies where the execs don't know the numbers, either because the numbers make them uncomfortable, the comptrollers or the controllers are not as forthcoming with the numbers, or there's just so many other things to think about that the numbers are not as examined as well as they should be. So now I think is a time for what I call, and this is what we termed it in the resource paper as well, the resource allocation audit. And this is taking a good hard look at everything that you're doing, all your revenues, all your expenses. So if I was to bring it down to a micro level of your home, look at every single, as Mark said, every single subscription you have, every single expenditure, because there's things that you subscribed to 5 years ago and you're still subscribed to that. So this is the same type of approach to use on your business. Sam, what are you seeing?
Well, I think you're exactly right, both of you, obviously. And I think the key here is really at making sure that your resources are aligned with your strategic plan. So I think it's sitting down as a leader and with your leadership team, the managers, leaders of each department, laying out the strategic plan and making sure that you have those right resources. As you mentioned, Mary, get rid of the ones that maybe were important 2 years ago, 5 years ago, strategic plan, but for whatever reason, you just continue to charge that credit card every month. But also looking forward, what resources do we have? Are they allocated correctly across that strategic plan? And what new resources might we possibly need? And then tying into what resources we might possibly need, look at creative ways of acquiring those resources. So for example, it might not just be buying something off the shelf. Let's say that you one of the resources you need is a sales team, a sales team in a new industry or a new market that you're going after. Well, that's really hard to build on your own. One of the unique opportunities we have right now is the opportunity to acquire resources at a cost that you might never have thought of before, pennies on the dollar, if you will, especially if those resources maybe are a part of somebody else's existing organization. Maybe there's an existing organization that's not doing very well. You could acquire that organization at a fraction of the cost that you might have been able to acquire a year ago, and acquire those resources as well.
Yeah, Sam, I think you're making such great points. I mean, really, all of you. You know, one of the things that we talked about in the white paper, but I think it's something that I really want to bring out here as well, is it's fundamentally when you talk about knowing the numbers and the resources in your organization, is especially now your employees need to understand how your organization makes money and how your organization loses money. But if they don't fundamentally understand the cash flow cycle of the business, they're not going to understand how to positively impact it. But worse than that, they're not going to understand how they negatively impact it. And Sam, when you were talking about the strategic plan, I think this is really interesting in that to think about after COVID has hit in the world that we live in now, how your resources needs may have changed. I've got a client right now. We were just on the phone a couple of days ago. And before COVID, he was looking for more office space and he was looking for more warehouse space. Now he's going to keep his employees at home and turn his current office space into warehouse space. That frees up cash flow to really invest in technology and more human resources needs that they have. So understanding that you've got to get up under those resources and pretty much intimately understand not only what you need, but maybe what has changed and how you need to reallocate those. But listen, we're doing something a little different this week, and we're going to keep these interviews just shy of about 8 minutes. So this is just part one of a 2-part series, the second part coming up in a couple of minutes. We're going to dive even deeper into the resources, really the solutions that you need to know to really put yourself in a position to emerge successful. So we'll be back in just a couple of minutes and continue the conversation. Thanks, guys.